Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Watertown City Council meeting of Monday, March 18th, 2019. Please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call, please.
Okay. Albertson?
Here.
Bueller? Danforth?
Present.
Lallam?
Here.
Manti? Here. Roby?
Here.
Solom?
Here.
Thorson?
Here.
Billhauer?
Here.
Why?
Present.
Thank you.
The first item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda, and I would like to modify the consent agenda by pulling item 1D. So is there a motion to approve the modified agenda? Moved by Manti, second by Billhauer. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item 2 is public comment. If anyone is here that would like to speak about an item, please come forward. Please state your name for the record.
Lisa Carrico. Thank you, Council, for taking the time. Further on the agenda today is obviously the transfer of a liquor license for the Boys and Girls Club's annual camel races. I am just extending an invitation to all of you to attend the event. As you know, it's quite the affair and is a lot of fun, and we hope to see you all there. I would also like to say that we have opened our new facility, as you know, many of you were there, and I wanted to extend an invitation to any of the council people or citizens of the public listening that if they would like a tour of the new facility, we're available anytime to give that tour. And I would also like to say, I have been giving the tours of our new facility, and when you enter the facility, there are hands on the wall that kind of signify, you know, donors in the community that have given not only privately, obviously the city of Watertown has donated, and we thank you for that, to our expansion. But I also realize that many of you council people have also contributed personally to that endeavor, and I don't know that we've actually extended a public thank you to also for your support privately as well as publicly as the city. So. But the camel races will be on April 5th at the Cottington County Extension Building, and we hope to see you all there.
Thank you. It is a beautiful new Boys and Girls Club. Anyone else? I see none. I'll move on. Item number 3 is approval of the agenda. So moved by Billhauer, second by Albertson. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 4 is application for a temporary location transfer and return of a retail on-sale liquor license owned by Friends of the Goss Opera House, Inc., doing business as Friends of the Goss Opera House, Inc., as follows. A, for the period of 4 o'clock p.m., April 5th, 2019, to 12 o'clock a.m., April 6th, 2019, from 100 East Kemp Avenue to 1910 West Kemp. And so I will ask for a motion for approval of that. Moved by Bueller, second by Manti, and open the public hearing. And I believe this is what you were just talking about. Am I right?
It is, and I'm just here in case you guys had any questions. Friends of the Goss was gracious enough to transfer their liquor license to the Boys and Girls Club for this event, and so we're very appreciative of that, and just the overwhelming support that we've gotten from the community. But if you do have any questions about the event, it's always been a safe event, no problems, and everyone has a good time. And Dempsey's will be providing the bartenders, so they are, is it TAMS certified? So it's always been well attended and well behaved. So
great, thank you. Any questions for Lisa? I don't see any. Thank you.
I'm sorry?
Are you riding a camel? She said.
No, but my camel will be dressed like a dragon, and so we're very excited. I'm not decorating it. My staff does that, so and that's what they came up with. So So
right. Thank
we're
you.
good. Thank you.
Anyone else for the public hearing? See none, I will close the public hearing and see if there's any. Councilman Roby?
I'll be recusing myself from this item.
Thank you. Any other council discussion? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item B is for the period after 12 o'clock a.m., April 6, 2019, from 1910 West Camp to 100 East Camp Avenue. It's a transfer back, so I'll look for a motion and a second for approval. Moved by Bueller, second by Y. And I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to comment about this? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Is there any discussion from the council? Councilman Lallam.
Just a question, why do we do these in two separate ones? Can't we do it for a certain time frame and then put it back?
I think we need a separate action to
By law or-
transfer one direction and then transfer back. So
Fair enough.
we wouldn't do it if we didn't have to. Just takes a little bit of extra breath. Any other comments? I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item 5 is the 2018 Library Annual Report presentation. And I will ask for a motion to approve the annual report, and then we'll have Dee Dee give it, and we'll move on it afterwards. So Councilman Albertson has made the motion. Second by Danforth. Okay, Dee Dee Whitman, Library Director.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to get my binder open here and get our presentation pulled up. And turn the microphone on. Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to get my PowerPoint pulled up here, and then we'll go ahead and get started talking about the 2018 annual report. So let me just get the right button going on here. Here we go. Okay, before I begin, I would like to recognize our library board members that have joined us here this evening. Of course, we have our council liaison, Dan Albertson. Thank you for being here tonight. And then we also have two other members of our board, Jackie Baxter and Judy Trzynka. So, ladies, thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
All right. So I'll begin with the library's mission statement. I'm assuming all of you have it memorized. All right. It's connecting people to the joy of reading, information, and lifelong learning. And so we really use this as the driver of our services and providing high-quality library services for the community. So next I'm going to talk about a few bright spots that we've had happen during 2018. We've had some growth in our overall holdings, our overall collections here at the library. We've had growth in our young adult and our adult programming. In our audiobook and our e-audiobook circulation, those are up. The databases that we purchase, specifically our library, that usage is up this year. And then our special services librarian is Lisa Solom, and she is unfortunately leaving us, and we are a little disappointed in that because she's done such a great job in special services. She's grown some of the offerings special services has, as well as the amount of items that are being circulated to our special services patrons. And then last, I want to highlight that we've got an increase in our registered users at the library, so the number of people who have library cards. So I'm not going to ask for a show of hands or a vote, but if you do not have a library card, I'm going to encourage you all here in this room and at home to stop by the library and get a library card. We've got lots of great stuff for you. We also had a bright spot, and then we have our new strategic plan now for 2019 through 2023. We were reaccredited for 2019 through 2021, and we have our certificate here tonight. And our patrons love us. And I know that sounds like I'm bragging, but I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the very end of the presentation. But along with bright spots, you always have things you need to work on too. So we've had a reduction in our overall ebook and physical book circulation, what amounts to about 5%. And I consider that pretty substantial. So I can tell you that my staff and I are going to be working really hard to drive those numbers back up. We also had a decrease in the databases usage that are provided by the South Dakota State Library. And when I asked them about it, because they send me the reports, they said it basically came down to one user of Ancestry. And we do have Ancestry use available in our library only. So I would like to invite all the genealogists back down to the library to check that out as well. And then we've had a slight decrease in our children's programming attendance, but like I mentioned before, we had some increases in adult and young adults, so we're still about stable, so I'm pretty happy with that. Another thing I'd like us to do a little bit better is start having yearly patron surveys. We had some surveys this past year involved with our strategic planning process, and it had been a little while since we'd done that, so I want to make sure we get those on a yearly basis so we can hear all the feedback from our community. And another place we need to kind of improve and grow is our technology offerings. And the IT department head, Spencer, you all know Spencer, he was a part of our strategic planning process and developing a technology plan. So I have full confidence that we'll get some upgrades going on in the library to provide better access for our patrons. We also, actually they, not me. The IT department recently installed new access points for wireless, and we're going to be having a brand new computer lab coming soon. So we're really excited about those things as well. All right, so I'm going to dive into the meat here, if you will. And we're going to talk about more specifically about the numbers. So this year I've got some graphs for you comparing what has happened in 2018 and 2017 and 2016. So here we can see that increase in library holdings that I was mentioning before. We had an increase in the physical books, in the ebooks, a slight decrease in ebooks that we purchase, and then, but overall, an increase. And I just want to be clear, because I don't think I stated it before. For our ebooks and databases, there are each of those that we purchase for our patron use only here in Watertown. And then there's also a consortium and agreement with the state. So that's why in that second chart there from the left, it says SDTG. That's South Dakota Titles to Go. So those are titles that are managed on a state level that we are a part of. We purchased to be a part of that group. And then that chart next to it for that says ebooks WRL, those are ones that we specifically purchase for our patrons only. In case you had a question about that. Next, we have our holdings about audiobooks, e-audio, and video, and other. And if you're curious about what the other collections are, they're things like math, reading, and science kits for kids. We have some interesting items that people may not have at home, like a projector or projector screen. Those are some things you can check out for a small fee from the library. One of the few things that we have for a fee. And in the future, it's part of our strategic plan. We're looking to offer more library of things type items. And other libraries offer things from cake pans to garden tools. We've got some ukuleles that we've used in classes, so we're going to circulate some of our ukuleles. So there'll be some more fun and interesting things coming for our library of things. I mentioned collections we purchase versus the state library. So this is the data about the ones that we purchase, as well as ones that we have a consortium with other libraries in the state. So we have ones that we purchase, and then we have a few the resources we purchase along with Brookings and Vermilion and Yankton and things like that. So those are just the numbers of resources over the last few years. And some of those kind of come and go. We decide if we like one, and we might let that one go, or we might add a new one. And sometimes it's not our choice. One of our new databases decided it was no longer going to serve the library market, so that was a big bummer. It was about it was a database having video games for people to download and keep, and I don't know what their decision was based on. I have a pretty good guess, but they're no longer serving libraries. So that's just an example of why these numbers might fluctuate. And then we have our total library holdings up by quite a bit. So I'm really happy that we have more offerings for our patrons in 2018. The next indicator are our library services. The first one is our library hours. We have really blessed with the library hours that we have, and they've stayed steady for a number of years. And we offer about 3,400 hours to the public. Open hours. We're only closed 10 days a year unless there's a special closing. So we like our availability for our patrons. We also have an increase in our total reference transactions, and I am excited about this. It shows how much people need to come to our staff for assistance. But I will say that with a caveat, because in previous years we'd used an estimate for those numbers. Now we're tracking those numbers every single day. So that's a slightly different way of tracking that data. And I mentioned in one of our bright spots, we've got an increase in users over the last few years. So hopefully we'll continue that trend as well. Now, this is one of the things we need to work on. We have an understanding that we are having growing digital collections. Libraries are changing, and we've seen since, I think, at least 2011, a decrease in our attendance at the library. But we are meeting people's needs through digital collections as well as outreach. We've expanded our outreach tremendously. So we're trying to meet people where they are without having an access barrier by location or time of day. And one good example of that is our outreach to area child care centers. Our children's librarian goes to LITI Educare, she visits Little Blessings, she visits Aero Prep, and we've even started a new service this year where she's delivering books to those places as well. And so far it's been going pretty good. We've got 5 centers so far, and they were all giving us a lot of positive feedback about that service. So we're really excited about that. But those are factors that we can kind of analyze as being a part of this drop in library attendance. But again, I'd like to encourage you all to get library cards and stop by the library. We are actually having a brand new exhibit that just got put up on Friday. Was put up by the local Vietnam Veterans Association, I think 1034. There's more than one group here in town, and they have set up this fantastic display of photos, and they've got a couple uniforms, and we added some of our materials on the Vietnam conflict, and they're doing that in honor of Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Day, which is the 30th of March. So they've put the display up, and it's going to be on display until the 15th of April. So again, come on down to the library, check it out. All right, next we're going to move on to circulation, or how many things that we get checked out from the library. And this was another one of the areas that we had a drop. I mentioned it was about approximately 5% of overall circulation. We're going to start with just our physical materials. So we had a drop in books. We had an increase in magazines. Way to go, magazines. Some people say they're going the way of the dodo, but not at our library. So, and then we had a dip in our non-print physical items as well, and that's our DVDs, our CDs, and audiobooks. So again, we're hoping to get those numbers back up, and so the total for that was down by almost 10,000. So again, get your library cards. Come on down, check things out for us. I mentioned our electronic materials. We did have a drop in those, but if you look in comparing 2018 to 2016, some of the items are very similar. So I don't know if 2017 was just a banner year for ebooks. So we'll just be continuing to monitor that data. We also had an increase in our e-audio books, so that's one of our bright spots. And right now, our streaming video options are very limited. It's another area that we're looking to expand upon. So the ones that we do have seem to be going out, but there's maybe 30 of them. So there's not very much selection at this particular point. There are a number of other services that we could investigate for that, but a lot of their business and pricing models are incompatible with our budget. So we will look to see about some options. We do have some trials that we'd like to do and see how we can serve people better in that regard. But then if we look at the totals of all of the circulation for the electronic materials, it is similar to 2017, so not a huge drop there. Proof that people are still really interested in our digital services and our digital library. Next is the database usage. The first graph shows the ones the state library provides. I mentioned before we had a big drop in Ancestry. So once again, genealogists, come on back. We got a group that meets every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. I'm sorry, not every Tuesday. The second Tuesday of every month at 1 o'clock. But here we have another bright spot are the databases that we've purchased, and we've made a number of new purchases in the past year. One of them is our Linda database that has 6,000 and more library courses on everything from business to technology to education. There's a little bit for everybody in there, arts and design and things like that. And we've had that since I think last March or April, and we've had continued growth of that throughout the year. So we're excited about that. All right. So then we see that little bit of a drop, though, that I was mentioning before, again, in the total database usage. And then finally, that total electronic content usage. So that's all of our electronic collections, the ebooks, the audiobooks, and the databases as well, all together. So then this is going back to the total circulation of all of our physical materials. I just showed you all the electronic materials. So for the physical materials, we are, again, showing a decrease there of about 11,000 or so. And then we can look at the next graph talking about specifically children's materials. And this is a measurement that is always a part of our annual report. Our services to children are very important. And so we are dropped down a little bit there, but we did have a real banner year with our summer reading program last year, and then we had some cancellations of programs this year, so we're hoping that'll rebound in 2019. And this is our overall collection use, and this is where we can see about around 5.2% decrease. That's everything I was just talking about all together, the entirety of our collection use. So we're going to be working on different programming, different advertising, lots of different things to help drive this number up. And again, I would like to invite you all to come out to the programming at the library and check out some books. Speaking of programming, I mentioned that there was a slight decrease in our programming this year. But once again, I mentioned last year's summer reading program was just a banner year. And so that reduction is not as concerning as it may seem. And then we did have some increases in the number of programs we offered. And we had some fluctuations in what age group was you can look at the graphs and see how it's a little less in one area and a little more in another. And here we have another bright spot. Both our adult and young adult programming had increases this year, both in terms of the number of programs as well as the number of attendees. And when you're completing this state survey, the state library has a website you enter everything on, and they have kind of a fail-safe, if you will. They have an alert to tell you, did you really mean to put that number in? Is that really correct? And when I put in the numbers for our young adult programmings, it gave me that alert. It was the only time we got it the entire time. It was such a large increase, they thought we just did it wrong. And it's something like a 500% increase from what we've had in the past. And that can really be attributed to our young adult librarian offering a consistent schedule of programs throughout the year. So we're really excited about that. And the last little chart on this screen is the one-to-one programs, and those are included in reference transactions, but these are specifically what may have been known in the past as bibliographic instruction. So it's teaching you how to use a resource, how to use the catalog, how to print, how to use the tools in the library. And again, some of these numbers in the past were actually estimates, so we'll continue to monitor that one as we go forward. And then I mentioned because of the growth in adult and young adult, it kind of counterbalanced the the losses in some numbers in children. So we're about the same as in previous years. But again, we're going to keep moving forward. In terms of internet usage, we've got our number of computers we use by the general public. We'll see an increase next year when we get our new lab and things like that in. We had a few computers that were just past their prime and they had to be sent to the farm, the IT farm. Yes. And then our public internet sessions, they are tracked by half-hour sessions. They are down from last year, but again, we had such a big increase last year that I'm not terribly concerned yet. So again, we'll keep monitoring. Our wireless has been decreasing for the last few years, and it's possible because that's correlating with our visitor reduction. And one of the things that we've discussed about that is that in the past we had a much larger population of kids from the middle school coming to the library. And now with the intermediate school in that same position, we don't see as many kids that age coming to the library. And now the middle school is a little far away. It's kind of a jaunt. So we've considered speaking with the school district to see how we might investigate perhaps busing kids over. But we'll see how that goes. We also might work with the Boys and Girls Club. Our teen librarian is already doing that, having a book club there. So since they've got such an amazing facility, we'd love to be able to help serve the kids that are there as well. And then the last number on this chart is the total internet sessions. And again, we see a decrease from last year. But we are steady in many ways, and interlibrary loan is one of them. We have similar numbers in the items that we receive or that we borrow from other libraries, as well as the items that we send out. And I'm also really excited about the fact that this has been consistent over the years, that we send out more items than we receive. That shows that we have a really high quality collection here at the library, and we have other libraries in our state that are interested in those materials. So we're glad we can meet those needs. But it also is a money saver for us too when we borrow from other libraries as well. That means we don't have to purchase those particular items, we can just borrow those. And then here I have the data about our special services. I mentioned it was a bright spot earlier. There's some data that we have only started collecting since I started, so some of it is missing in terms of organizations and private residences. And our loaning libraries is one of our newest things. We only have one facility that we offer this at right now, but it could expand. And so Lisa has been bringing anywhere from 15 to 30 books just to the location, and then their activities or recreation coordinator is lending those out to their residents and working with them in that way. So that's a cool new thing that she started, sorry. And then again, our circulations are up for books and media and even ILS. So we're happy with Lisa's work in special services, and we will miss her. So. I mentioned at the beginning of this that one of our bright spots is that our patrons love us. And we did a Love My Library kind of love note for the library in February. And you'll never guess, but books was number one. We had 16 people say we love our books in some manner. Second is something that I say all the time. We have amazing staff at the library. Our staff is friendly, our staff is engaged, and they're committed to the community. And so it's nice to see all of those kind of thank yous or love letters to our staff. Other people were talking about how it's such a fun place, an educational place, a magical place. That one was my favorite. And then others said how they love the toys, computers, the newspapers, and free DVDs. And these are just a few examples of the notes. So I like to go on the computer, and sometimes I like to read the newspaper. Happy Valentine's, Dad. From Micah. Libraries are a magical place. It takes you to magical places just by reading. Anyone can be nice. It's all inside you. I love staff, books, and the library. Sarah, age 10. This next one is really fun to read. What I love about the library is that it has awesome books and cool movies and fun toys. And this next one is probably my favorite just because it was our summer reading theme last year was Libraries Rock. So it says, Libraries Rock, oh yeah. Captain Underpants. And then the last one is because I love to read, but I can't afford to buy all the books I want. Amen. So if you don't have that library card, come on down. We have the books that you want. If there's something you want that we don't have, let us know. We can look into that for you. So, any questions?
Great, thank you. Questions? Councilman Vilhauer?
Dee Dee, thank you for your report and for your service. Just a question. Obviously, you compare yourself to peers in the area. How would you say we compare as far as trends, usage, facilities? I mean, however you want to rank it. Just any comments about other communities in the area?
Well, you know how they say not to compare yourself, right? But when you do look at other communities in the area for our size, like you might think of Aberdeen. They have a university. You might think of Brookings. They have a university. Those things drive up numbers in public libraries considerably. So I don't necessarily like to compare ourselves to other libraries, but if I'm thinking of data, and this is old data, I haven't seen recent data, you'll see higher numbers in Brookings and in Aberdeen. We have some very similar numbers with Vermilion and with Yankton. I would guess with Pierre, but I haven't seen that data, so I can't speak to that. There are some libraries that are just booming right now, and Rapid City is one of them. So obviously they are a much larger community than us. But as a librarian, I love to hear that libraries are successful wherever they are. So.
Any other questions or comments? I don't see any, so thank you, Dee Dee. And I will look for action to approve the 2018 annual report. All those in favor? We already got the motion second, remember? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. I got my library card number memorized.
Yes, that's the best way to be. But if you need some assistance, we are happy to help you. So.
Thank you. Okay, item number 6 is the Urban Renewal District 2018 Annual Report of Finances and Activities. And I need a motion to approve that annual report of the Urban Renewal Board as well. Is there a motion and second? Motion by Albertson, second by Danforth. And Kristen, would you
Thank
help
you,
us out
Mayor.
with this?
Yeah, this was kind of, Matt and I both worked on this. Matt helped to provide the report of the activity, and then I worked to provide the financials. If you have any questions kind of on the activities, Matt can probably touch on it. In regards to the financial statements, the Urban Renewal Board did not have a budget for 18, so as you can see, there's not a lot of activity. But if you do have any questions on it, I could go through it a little bit, or like I said, Matt provided the report of activities. So,
Councilman Vilhauer has a
Kristen,
question.
I've got a couple of questions. On the revenue side, there's no property owned by the Urban Renewal District, but there's, I shouldn't say that. I mean, there's rentals, buildings. What is that? Where's that come from?
that's a good question, because I was just, and I know we've discussed it before. I don't know right off hand, but I think it is the bathroom. The bathroom and the volunteer center. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next question is, on the balance sheet doesn't balance. I'm assuming, as I look at this, there must be about $100,000, give or take, in cash sitting in a bank account someplace. As I look at the 2017 balance sheet versus 2018, if I'm correct in that, that's what it takes to balance it. Without an Urban Renewal District board, who is actually monitoring that, or where is that an account that we or that your office still has control over, or
Yes,
Shed some light on that, Kristen.
we're watching it. Like you said, there wasn't a lot of activity. Where are you showing?
Well, there must have been payoffs of some loans from 17 to 18, which would have reflected it or result in an increased corresponding amount of cash. So, like I say, with to get the balance sheet to balance, there's got to be about $100,000 roughly sitting in a cash account someplace. I'm just wondering who. Do you see my point?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering where is that money? I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but it just begs the question. Without a board.
Yeah. I will have to do some looking on that, but yeah, we're watching it. So I don't know if just one of the numbers got off, but I can report back on that too.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Councilman Albertson?
As a comment to that, Kristen, it seemed like when I was on there, and maybe Beth or John might know this too, but it seemed like we did have an account with actual cash in it, like maybe at Great Western Bank, I think. They were holding the city's money, but I think there was an account with just cash in it. The second thing is, what I'm wondering is, there's a continued talk about the flowers downtown, and I see with $146,000, would there be any reason we wouldn't pursue that still, that flower situation? It was such a positive thing, and last year the cutback, I think, if ever there's a time now that we need to spice up Watertown, it seems like that would be the case, and for $12,000. Maybe it's too late for this year too, because we didn't get started on it.
It is too late to get, like we normally, in the past, we were contracting already for those baskets and so on. But there is an effort with the downtown businesses to do their own thing and as a group to enhance their own areas.
Well, I think there was that before too, but it just doesn't get done like it did when the money was put into it, and the thing, with the GOS trying to generate itself now, and it seems like if we could do something from a city standpoint, we chose not to help the funding, which is neither here nor there. So, but here's a lot smaller case that if we could go to a nursery someplace, one of the nurseries, and say, can you put baskets together for us again? It may be too late for the actual growing of it, but they probably have flowers that they could
Right.
put in these baskets.
Right, and I mean, we could just buy them outright, because they all have them for sale.
They have to be special flowers. They have to be, quote, commercial flowers. I think that was one of the problems they were running into in the past, was just to buy a flat of petunias and geraniums from, like, Shopko or whatever, won't last the way the ones we had out there or have out there now, in terms of their ability to withstand whatever comes at them. And that was one of the problems in the past, over or under fertilizing, and then, of course, watering. So when, the business group gets together to talk about putting up flowers, they should do so with guidance from somebody who's used to outside flowers.
I think the flowers are really important, and along 81, the same thing, and we've had numerous conversations with the Park and Rec Department about how to maintain that and try to get the property owners to take a little more
Yep.
ownership of it and make it be less of the city doing it to the property owners helping themselves out. And I don't.
That's
Terry,
what I'm just.
Terry, you want to add to that? Anything? We do have money a little bit of money going for downtown flowers for this year, and a little bit going for Highway 81.
Right. I think we have 5,500, and our commitment is Highway 81, and then along Kemp Avenue Bridge. That's basically what our budget's gonna be able to handle. You know, years ago, we had the total amount of money for the hanging baskets, the labor to maintain uptown, and through the years, it's degraded down to our budget's going to allow for Highway 81 and basically Kemp Avenue Bridge. So, I mean, we're in conversations with the mayor. We can both smile. We've had multiple conversations. We know the importance of it, but the dollars that it takes. You know, as far as the hanging basket, and Beth, you brought it up, we typically in the past about mid-February would order those,
Right,
and then whoever got the bid, the greenhouse, let's say either a Tree Farm or Sioux Valley, they would actually grow them in their greenhouse for a couple months. So when we did put them out, they were full foliage. And I agree with the mayor at this point, we're probably behind the 8 ball.
Was my suggestion that I don't disagree that homeowners that have the flowers in front of them, or even business owners that may want the flowers, certainly could make arrangements for watering and fertilizing, but it has to be done at least with the assistance of somebody who understands, and I know I'm talking to the choir here, but who understands outdoor flowers and the difference between those and, you know.
Right.
So anyway, that was just my suggestion. And the last comment I had was, it had always rolled around in my head to start a flower fund, either through the Watertown Community Foundation or something like that, where people could contribute to it. It would be managed, it could grow, and it would be something that could be drawn on then every year for nicer flowers downtown. Just want to throw that out there for everybody, so as an idea. So.
Any other comments? Kristen?
To Glenn's point, I would like to, there's a slight typo in the cash balance. So, yeah, the restricted cash was not added into the top. So the true cash balance is $111,757.41. So.
And that is where?
And that's art. It's at Great Western. It's with the city funds. But
Okay.
that is the restricted portion that's
Right,
set
okay.
aside for those revolving loans.
Okay.
So that is a restricted amount. The 10,000 was just their the normal cash balance, but the 111,757.41 is a restricted. So
Okay, so, but that is an account that we're aware of, that we're monitoring, even though there is no Urban Renewal District Board
yes.
any longer.
Yep,
Okay.
it is a city fund. It is. Yep.
Councilman Danforth?
On that regard, Kristen, as far as a restricted fund goes, so if there are loans out and people are paying those, not if, when they're paying them back, that money goes back into that account for purposes of redistribution or new loans?
That is correct.
If we don't have a urban renewal board today,
It's sitting there.
it's sitting there and there's no purpose for that,
Yep.
so there are no new loans requests and going out, correct?
That is correct. Yep.
What would it take until that ultimately gets resolved, if it ever gets resolved, that we would have that ability again? What would it take to change or remove some of that restriction to account for the flowers
Yep.
now? Because you do have a need now, whereas the loans just aren't happening.
That's correct. Matt and I have been doing a little bit of reviewing too. We're trying to kind of go back in history too, because I do think that initially some of this money that was used for the loan program was tied to some grants. So we have to make sure that anything that we do, there's no stipulations with that money, because I do think some of this was originally grant money, and then we started that revolving loan process. So we have to make sure if we would do anything to get rid of it, we're not doing anything kind of against those regulations. But if once Matt and I have done some reviewing to see if that's a possibility and we come back, those are discussions that we can have and should have as to, do we continue with the loans or do we use it towards another project? So
We have been having those conversations, and that's what resulted, that they need to look into what we can do with it. And also the Watertown Development Company is considering taking on the role of the Urban Renewal Board. And we haven't gotten to the point of saying that, we're going to ask if that's what we should do. But we're right at this point trying to figure out what we can do, what our options are, and then we'll weigh them out.
It would be good to know if there are restrictions on that from the grant standpoint, whether that's to the principal only or principal and interest if it could come back.
Yep.
So if the interest is available.
Yep. And that's the other thing, too, that you will notice. The urban renewal will earn interest on their cash balance, the unrestricted portion, and then the portion that they're earning towards off of that loan cash is going into a separate. So we are kind of watching those two. So we've been monitoring what the interest is based on.
Councilman Vilhauer?
Just another follow-up then, relative to the current loans that are outstanding. I mean, who monitors collection? I mean,
We do. We have a
It's never
spreadsheet, and we watch that everybody payments are being received
okay,
each
so
month. They're
so
all in
that's handled by the finance
Yep,
office then?
that's
Okay.
handled by the finance.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? All right, there's a motion and second on the floor. Kristen?
Just that the motion reflects the change of the
Yes,
missing
okay.
cat.
All right, Kristen clarified the confusion.
Yes.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 7 is presentation of the preliminary report of recommendations of the Home Rule Charter Revision Commission. There's no action required here, but I see the chairman, Kyle Lallam, is here, so I'll let him make his presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. First, I want to thank you for assembling a diverse and engaging group for this commission. 21 members were involved, and it truly was a pleasure to work with these individuals. I do have a couple in the audience tonight. I've got Chris Carter with me and Jason Beekler, in addition to myself, so they're here to see the process through. Also, I'd like to recognize Byron Calise, my vice chair. And at our last meeting, I neglected to thank both the city attorney, Matt Roby, and Jana Mills for all of their work that they've done behind the scenes, in addition to the mayor and council members for their support throughout the process. As far as the preliminary report is concerned, I know that you got this sent to you, I believe, on Saturday or Sunday, so we'll highlight a few of the pieces that will have some significant changes. And speaking on behalf of the commissioners, this is our goal and hope that the residents of Watertown will educate themselves to the point where they will understand the benefit of utilizing a city manager. Some will ask why. Why do we need this change? Things are okay. Things have been going okay the way that they are. But our recommendation is not about being fine or okay as much as it is a matter of embracing the change that we have come to realize that hiring a professional manager frees elected officials from the administration of daily operations and gives them time to focus on policy issues while guiding Watertown's future. And the manager, in turn, appointed by this governing body or the council, oversees the day-to-day operation and implementation of this policy, with the manager focusing on day-to-day and the elected officials more time to concentrate on creating the vision for the future. So as far as the charter is concerned, it's every 5 years to date, so the powers of the city hasn't changed. But to highlight a couple of pieces, we will be recommended on section 2.02, the composition and eligibility and election terms. We will be recommending that we reduce the number of 10 council members to 6. That will be 1 per ward of the existing 5 wards of Watertown, plus 1 at large, in addition to 1 mayor, which would be elected at an at-large position as well, making the governing body for the city of Watertown, should the voters decide to approve this, 7 members. The ward system was left in place for a few reasons. 1, the elected officials bring that community-wide perspective in establishing that overall policy. And 2, keeping the ward system in place restricts the leadership from being centralized within larger wards or larger voting districts, meaning that A through E all have representation. So at most you would have 3 members from this, potentially have 3 members from the same ward on that governing body of 7. So also on 2.2 subsection D, the continuation of office, At present, the council and mayor, upon successful adoption of this amendments to this charter, will change form of government. Basically, what we did was this portion right here. So starting in the 2021 election, wards B, C, and E would be elected initially to a 2-year term, and wards A, D, as well as the at-large and that mayor position would all be elected for an initial 4-year term. And then subsequently going forward in the following elections, it would be every 4-year terms, which is what is spelled out via the city's ordinance. Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Kyle, can I interrupt for just a minute? Can you explain to those that may not have been watching your last meeting last week, how were wards B, C, and E selected as being the 2-year terms?
Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, well, we did have 2 members on the commission that are related to council members. So in an effort to make sure that everything was on the QT, we just put the 5 wards in a hat and drew out the first 3 that would be a 2-year term. So thank you for that, Glenn. Okay. And then in section 2.3, the mayor duties, mayor still has power. The difference between what we're proposing and currently, the mayor does not have a vote on council matters except for in the instances of a tie. So the mayor shall have all the powers and duties as a council member, including that power to vote. Move that off to the side. The mayor shall be recognized as the head of the government for all ceremonial purposes and by the governor for the purposes of martial law. But they won't have any administrative duties because, again, those administrative duties would go back to that city manager position. Section 2.5, the prohibitions. Let me get to that here. The city manager would basically be responsible for all hiring and firing of employees and department heads. Obviously, the department heads would have authority with that city manager's approval to hire and fire and give reviews to their line level employees, but ultimately that power and decision would go back to the city manager, which is a little bit different than what happens now. And then in section subpoint C on there, the council will deal directly with that city manager for all inquiries, whether for all department heads. So your point as a elected officials, your point of contact is then the city manager, and they can get you the answers that they need. Another change that we've recommended for section 2.6, which is vacancies, forfeiture of office, and filling of vacancies. The main change that we did there was subpoint 5, C subpoint 5. And currently the threshold is 50% attendance for if you're unexcused so 50% attendance, and we changed that to an 85% attendance, and that's not only for the council meetings, but that's all for special meetings as well. And the rationale behind that was done in an effort to ensure that community-wide perspective for establishing policy is there, so that the voters are going to want their elected officials to be there as that oversight and as that governing body for that city manager position. Next thing,
Kyle?
I'm sorry.
There's piece about the excuses being liberally granted was removed.
Yeah, there was a piece in our current charter that stated that absences would be liberally granted. I mean, it's still the mayor's going to run the council meetings and help establish the agendas. It'll be the council between the mayor and the council president's discretion to give absences and to grant absences, but we just felt that liberally granted piece kind of needed a little bit more teeth to it as far as our conversations were concerned when we're changing that form of government. So that was the rationale behind that. So thank you, Mayor, for pointing that out. Section 2.8, City Finance Officer, that also will change. The City Finance Officer would report directly to the city manager, And then there's some other additional pieces to that in that regard following within this document of changes. Section 2.11, subsection C. This goes back to the fact that voting, except for procedural motions, shall be a roll call with ayes and noes. Pretty much the same. It just states that the mayor will have full voting rights, which is right here. Okay.
Kyle.
Kyle, just a point of clarification. If this is approved and this is our new home rule charter, any reference to council would now by definition include the mayor, correct?
Well, I guess I would defer that to the city attorney, but I mean, that's kind of the inference, so I would imagine that that's how it would go. But I'll let Matt clarify.
Yes, any reference to council, if this is approved, would include the mayor as a full member of council. Of course, there's sections that will still call out the mayor for specific duties. I believe in up above whatever section that was in, as far as the designated representative for intergovernmental relations, etc. So
2.03.
Yeah.
Yep.
Currently, it says that the council consists of the mayor and 10 council members. That's what our charter says now. But the mayor doesn't have the full voting rights.
Yep. So that's been clarified in this change. So, and if there's a verbiage change or if there needs more clarification to Glenn's question, we can certainly address that in advance of our final presentation on April 1st, if that's your desire and wishes. 2.15. Right now, the way our charter is written, we review this charter every 5 years. The conversation that we had would be now, with this change, would be to change it to every 8 years, and that would begin in 2027. So just to back up a little bit, so the voters are going to go to the polls and decide on this on the June 18th, 2019 election. It would take effect in 2021. So we thought that the idea would be that starting in 2027 would be the first home rule charter revision, and then subsequently every 8 years after that. The rationale behind that was that if you did it every 5 years and you changed it in 19, they would really only be on staff for 2 years, maybe 2.5, 3 years before this process started again. And our commission members thought that we should give them more time. They should be able to perform their duties correctly, and they would not have to worry about us changing that form of government after relocating here if it's somebody from outside the community, because it does allow for that. And while the city manager doesn't have a guaranteed tenure, by pushing that next review out to 2027, it allows the community time to see the benefits to this change while ensuring we're getting quality candidates that doesn't have a short window on the back end to it. So that was part of that rationale that's there.
Councilman Danforth has a question.
Kyle, just a comment is I think it's important to note that no matter what our interval is for the home rule charter review, there's always a process that can initiate consideration and change. That's important.
Yep.
And
Good point.
I think that, if it's significant enough, it does not going to have to take 8 years to get there.
That's correct.
With the right process. So.
Yep. And the other thing that I would reiterate the fact is that as the legislative body, as the council members and mayor that are in place, they're the oversight for that position. So, I mean, actually, the city manager is going to be held accountable on a daily basis based on their actions and their ability to push through what the city needs to do and operate the city on the day-to-day operations side of it with the guidance of council going forward. So thank you for that. Another change would be section 3.01. This is something that we still need to finalize as far as the onboarding process would be concerned. The manager would be hired by a majority of the council or that legislative body. Right here it says that the city council, by affirmative vote of 4 or more members of the council, shall appoint the city manager and fix that manager's compensation. They shall also conduct a review of the performance at least annually. Some of the individuals that we had in here that we met with as a group They said that initially on the onboarding process, one of them, I believe, had a 3-month, a 6-month, and then an annual after that. In addition to the governing body doing an evaluation on performance, they also did a self-evaluation, and then they used that as a dialogue piece to find stopgaps and things like that going forward. So, again, the governing body has all of the power to hire and terminate that position. But again, that onboarding process, this is the part where, in conversation with Attorney Roby in advance of today's meeting, it's kind of stipulated that if this were to go into effect be voted on and approved by the voters in 19 and not go into effect until 2021, we need to have conversation at the commission level as to, do we allow the existing body at that time, that elected body within that 19 to 21, hire this individual and get the onboarding process started so that when the election of June 2021 is done, they are already on the ground running, because they, in essence, would write the budget and turn it into council for approval? Or do we wait and then allow an interim position to be held until the new council can hire that individual, do the vetting of applicants and all that? So we will take care of that at our next meeting. Well, I just found out about it now, so I'll get that worked out, and I will bring that forward, give it out to the members so that we can make sure that we've got a quorum, and then we'll send that information through Matt and Janet to you guys as well so that we can get that back. Definitely we'll have it done, and our final recommendation will be brought forward at that April 1st meeting for you all. So I would imagine that it would be either Thursday of this week or sometime first part of next week. Okay? Again, 3.2, that's the removal piece. Like I said, council or governing body. And when I say council in this regard, I am inferring the mayor as well, like Matt did clarify. They have the right and the authority, with a vote of 4 or more, to remove that individual from that position as well. So if it's just not working out, we need to find somebody else. That governing body has the ability to do that. 3.3, acting city manager. Again, if they're unable to perform their duties, they can appoint their temporary replacement, but council has the authority to revoke that and designate somebody else until a new city manager that position can be filled. 3.04, powers and duties of city manager. This is really where it kind of gets into all the nuts and bolts of a lot of this is crafted not only by what some of our competing communities, Brookings and Aberdeen, has, also is pulled from the International City County Management Association, ICMA, which is one of the outlets that we utilized in collecting information to come to this point and come to this decision and recommendation for you, as well as the National Civic League. There's a lot of information on those websites, and I would encourage you as council members and the public as a whole to look up those two sites. There's a ton of information that's in there, but this talks about everything from whose the administrative duties are, attend all city council meetings, except when the council is obviously in an executive session to consider personnel decisions, which the personnel decision is that of that city manager. See that all laws, provisions of this charter, and acts of city council subject to the enforcement by the city managers or its employees are fully executed. Again, that goes back to that holding them accountable for the day-to-day operation of the city. Prepare and submit the annual budget and capital program to city council. Again, council, just like with the mayor, putting together with the finance officer the budget for the upcoming year, council approves it. Same thing happens on the city manager side of it. Submit updates annually to that 5-year capital plan, as well as the 5-year financial plan. We felt that was important. Submit to the city council and make available financial reports for year and fiscal reports. Keep the council fully advised, obviously, on the financial conditions of the city. Most importantly, one of the added layers that we put in there was that, well, I get to that in the next one, I apologize. So sign all contracts on behalf of the city until as long as you've got approval of the council, be the personnel director of the city, and perform such other duties as specified within this charter or may be required by council. So whether it's in this charter or the council decides to make a change to city ordinance, it would be up to that individual to make that happen. .03, we had a lot of discussion on this, and we felt that it was important that the city attorney, as the legal officer for the city, be appointed by the city manager and have and report directly to the city manager, in addition to the city finance officer.
Kyle?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Vilhauer?
Kyle, I'd like to throw a suggestion out. Matt and I had a conversation this afternoon. I understand why in the current home rule charter we treated the city finance officer separately because they were reported to the council. So that's why we had a separate paragraph or section 208. Well, my comment now is that the finance officer is no different than the city attorney. To me, it seemed like the finance officer position or section should be in the same part of the document as the city attorney's in the home rule charter. So that just it doesn't change anything. It just how the document is put together. That might be something that you want to consider as we finalize this.
So you're saying moving it down into that Article 4?
Yeah, I'm just saying Section 208 really could be like Section 404. You'd have to renumber, obviously, from there on.
I don't see that would be an issue. One of the checks and balances that we put in place on this in regards or relation to the finance piece of it is, and I'll get to that here, Section 5.04. Well, let's go through 5.04 first. Again, like I said, the city council shall schedule the public hearings for the city manager's budget proposal, and then the adoption happens too. That's very similar to how it is now. It just who's creating that document changes from mayor to the city manager. And then as that oversight piece is concerned, and that's in section 5.06. Here's two things that we did change that's in there. If you look at subpoint A on 5.06, if during the fiscal year the city manager and finance officer certify that there are funds available for appropriations for revenues in excess of those estimated, the council by ordinance may make a supplemental appropriations up to the for the year up to that amount of excess. And conversely, if there is a reduction, and that is referenced in subpoint C, if at any time during the fiscal year it appears probable to the city manager or the finance officer that revenues or fund balances available will be insufficient to finance the expenditures, they're to let the council know as well. So we added another layer in there with that finance officer piece as that reporting entity. So if we ran into a funding issue, and we're not talking flowers, we're talking on a grander scale, either the city manager or that finance officer would come to that governing body and say, we have a problem. So we felt that was important to do that. So like I said, I don't, the rest of the subsections, a lot of that is the same as what it is now, other than the changes to the wards and all of that. I will come back at that April 1st meeting and go through some of these again, but for the most part, this document will be done, with the exception of a few changes that we need to make at our follow-up meeting after my conversation with Matt. I personally feel this is one of the greatest opportunities that can enact change that will have a positive and lasting impact on the city of Watertown for long-term growth, prosperity, and the stability of this community. It's our commission's desire that this be put to a public vote during that June election, and we will finalize the changes to this charter and bring it back to you on the April 1st, 2019. And I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Councilman Danforth?
Couple comments and then a couple questions too. First of all, I had the chance, Kyle, to attend several of the meetings, and I have been very, very impressed with the work and the openness and the willingness by all people to express their ideas and concerns in this process, and with the detail that's gotten you to here to where it is today. And I agree, it's extremely important thing for our community, but I commend all of you. That's been great. Couple questions. Is it explicitly clear in the verbiage that the council is the mayor and the voted council members? And the reason why I say that is there is a section in there that we've had questions on in regards to employment by the city and the time frame associated to that. I believe, do you know what section it is, by chance?
That's in 2.02. That's your composition piece.
I'm not sure.
Go back here.
I don't have it on my screen, actually.
I'll go right up here.
But there's something that limits, if you are an elected council, I'm going to use the word council person, that you can't accept city employment for a 1-year period after leaving office. What is it?
205.
2.05, apparently.
Correct.
So-
So the change, in my opinion, the change, if the change is enacted, it's abundantly clear that the mayor is no longer any different than a council member, apart from a few extra duties that they may have to perform. But currently, except for that one section that says that the under composition under 202, the rest of the document makes it very clear in my mind that the council and mayor are separate. And so there's also state law on this issue, specifically in regards to the city manager position, that says that the governing body, that members of the governing body cannot serve as city manager for 1 year until 1 year after the expiration of their term. Governing body is defined in state law as the governing body. The mayor is separately referenced, and so it's also very clear to me that state law references the governing body in that regard and not the mayor. So,
A couple things. It doesn't, other than the city manager, it does not, state law does not restrict any other position. Is that correct?
correct.
Okay. So all I'm saying is I would rather err on the side of absolute, explicit statement. We shouldn't have, it's too simple to make this readable and understandable by anybody. And if there's a way for us to do that, to make sure that 10 years from now or whatever it is, and people read this, there's no question as to who that pertains to. That's all I'm suggesting there. Second thing is, I think there should be some consideration, and I haven't heard any discussion on this in regards to term limits for council members or mayors. Typically speaking, I think a lot of the public believes in term limits. And I don't know why we wouldn't look to do that here. And whether that's 2 terms, 3 terms, whatever the number is, I think there should be some consideration for that as long as we're going through this process. Then a couple questions. There's been talk about full-time mayor, part-time mayor, council salaries, mayoral salaries. Where do those decisions get made after this vote is? Let's just say the vote is taken and it's approved to go to city manager. How does that happen?
That process, I mean, as far as what research I've done and what's spelled out in here, the compensation package, both for your city manager, part-time mayor, full-time mayor, that's the decision of that governing body to make. And their compensation packages is set forth by that group, that individual. I mean, your governing body is going to establish that.
204. It's under 204 if you want to scroll down.
So, again, I'm going to go on the assumption that a city manager gets approved, okay? So question I have then is, we have 10 council members until then, right? For 2 years.
Unless,
No.
yes.
Yeah, for 2 years.
So if it's voted on in 2019, yes, there is that continuation of term clause in the charter. The only way that we can get around that would be as if you as city council would opt to do a special election to enact that change quicker.
When does this, it would enact 2 years? That's what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so we would stay as a 10 council. The mayor would still not have a voting position on it unless it was a tie, right?
Exactly.
So that all stays the same, okay?
That's correct.
So it's up to the council at that point to make those decisions before it gets enacted.
That's correct.
Okay. Last question I have, maybe, is
Wait, hold on a second. I want to make sure make which decisions.
the vote of, by the city, whether there's a city manager or not. We don't know that yet, right?
Right. So which
So
decisions?
the decisions of full-time mayor, part-time mayor, salaries for any elected official need to occur before.
Well, that's going to go through your budgeting process when you're writing your
Right, but
2021 budget, but
gonna
that would be, yes,
it's gonna
back to
take
you.
place by this body in a process so
Yep.
that people know what they're getting into when they run for election.
That's correct.
Okay. My last question that I have is, again, assuming this gets passed by the people, what is our process for educating our community? Because there is a lot of misinformation and opinions, and there's going to be, I think, a very critical educational process here. And so I don't know who heads that up in this process. I don't know if that's the mayor or the council. I don't know who that is.
Well, that's, I mean,
But
that
it's
is,
an extremely important piece to this going
it
forward.
is a great, that's a great question. I do have a number of members from our commission that are willing to go out to service clubs, service groups, entities within the community, meet with them. We're developing an informational PowerPoint that we can present so that we can dispel some of that. I mean, like I said in my opening piece, I mean, this is a change that we will enact to a form of government that many people don't feel that there's a problem to it. And it's not that we have a problem. It's just that when you're looking at long-term stability and that continuity, I think that this is the way to go. So our task, I guess, as the commission members, and I know, like I said, we've had a number of them that have volunteered to do some of that campaigning, if you will. And by campaigning, I mean more of an educational process to the voters. There are a number of them, including myself and Byron Calise as my vice chair, that have already offered to go out and do that. Now, obviously, we don't have a budget and we don't have funds available to do it, but Roger Whittle is one of our members, and he has indicated that the public opinion in advance of that election in June would be doing news pieces on it, both on the pro and on the con side of it, so that they can address that in a apolitical way. We also would have the opportunity as individuals within the commission and anybody throughout the community too, that for that matter, that wants to write an editorial piece. He's offered that as well. Byron and I have spoken with both the local radio stations as far as getting on air once this is finalized in April. And doing some call-in things with the radio stations so that we can get some of that information out that way as well.
One last comment. I think we need a point person so that we know that there's a concerted effort on education and that we're not going in different directions. And
well,
that would be important. I don't know where that gets assigned, but I think that's going to be an important part of it.
I feel that part of the process in being the chair for this commission would be to take that mantle to a certain extent. Obviously, I have a regular job too, but I do have flexibility in my job that allows me to have a fluctuating schedule, so I can make some of these meetings. And like I said, I mean, Byron, my vice chair, he's a retired military guy and is happy to do that as well. But we feel that between Byron and myself, we feel that that's equally as important as running the meetings and getting us to this point so far.
Councilman Billhauer.
Just a follow-up comment. You made those comments at the meeting last week, Kyle. I don't think that was necessarily expected to be part of your role, but I'm sure glad to hear that your group, or at least part of your group, is willing to take that on, because that education process is going to be critical to get the word out to the public. So I really appreciate the effort that your group is willing to take the lead on this. And also, just in general, I look back what you accomplished going back to early to mid-January. You had a huge task ahead of you, and I was very impressed with the way the meetings were run and what you all got accomplished in a relatively short short period of time, because, like I say, it was a big task, and I really thank those involved, your group, and some of the city staff that were involved, because this was really a chance to change the course of how our city is run going forward, and it's appreciated.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we really did have a dynamic group, just a great group of individuals, very diverse, very engaging. I mean, I think that I think our greatest vacancy was 6. We had 6 members miss our last meeting simply because it was that spring break week, but otherwise we may have had 1 or 2 of those 21 members miss on any given meeting. And just the way that it's set up with that quick timeline window, we were forced to set an aggressive agenda just based on the dates that we needed to have this report, the initial report back. A lot of the individuals that are on our commission, I mean, they volunteered their time. They were requested by you as council to serve in this capacity. And I think it's easy to volunteer when it's something that you're passionate about. So I think I know more now about city forms of government than I ever thought I would ever want to or be willing to learn about. And that's what I said. I think in going back to my comment about picking up that mantle and trying to educate the public, it really isn't this change in government isn't about an individual or individual council members or an administration or a mayor or anything like that. It's just more of what we feel is important based on the information that we have collected during this process is the best way for Watertown to move forward.
Councilman Lallam.
Kyle, could we look at maybe doing a town hall type setting where people could ask questions and things of that? Maybe Lake Erie would be involved in they have probably the biggest space that we could possibly use where we could get some of the commission members to go up there and the general public could come up and ask questions, maybe dispel some of the rumors or some of the, unknown that goes with it so that we are constantly getting the right information so they know what you're looking at, what you guys went over. They can go back and watch the videos if they want to, but it might be just easier just to come out and ask us questions. Let's go over it, and we don't have 40 people asking the same question. They can get everyone to come up. Maybe that's a great way of doing it.
That's a great idea, and I think once our PowerPoint is developed and we've got all of that put together, I wouldn't have a problem doing that in that public setting. The other thing that I would stress is that to go back and watch the commission meetings. Most of our meetings were 60 minutes or less. That was really our goal getting into it because we're trying to be cognizant of people's volunteer time. There were a couple meetings that were 90 and 90 plus minutes. But if they don't have time to go back and read or watch the archived commission meetings on the city website, I think that we would be able to put together enough information to where we could embed that not only on the city's website if they're willing to do that, but also on the chamber and CVB websites, just as kind of that common link. I know that you can jump from website to website between the chamber, CVB, and city website, but it wouldn't be that hard to put that in there with those individuals' blessings as well. So,
Councilwoman Manti.
Well, great minds think alike, because I was going to give the same suggestion that Adam just gave, but I would also think that I've watched all the meetings, but there's something about being able to ask that personal face-to-face and get an answer, and and sometimes in those recorded meetings you can't always hear everything that everybody's saying. But I would think from a commission's point of view, and I agree with Glenn that this commission accomplished more than I've ever seen, and I'm not disappointed at all, and I'm not afraid to say I was disappointed last time, and so you did so much work. It would be a real tragedy if, because of lack of education of the community and the people who are going to be voting on this, if it failed. And so I think it's important to everybody in the room, everybody on the council, the commission, whatever we can do to help educate the public is going to make your work not for naught. Not for naught. Did I do that right? Anyway, it's not going to be wasted time and effort and things that you did to bring forth this really good change. and that was just kind of my comment, was that it's upon all of us that are looking at this, you know, whether we have to answer somebody who's for it or against it, just information, plain and simple.
Well, and I think that, I mean, you got a great point, Beth. I think that, you know, like I said, if the voters do vote it down, I mean, it's not going to be it's not going to hurt my feelings by any means. I mean, yes, we put a lot of time into it, but we're making this recommendation because we feel that this is the right way to go. If the voters ultimately, which that's how the commission, or I mean, that's how this charter review is set up. I mean, it's the voters' decision to make. So, you know, if they vote it down, I mean, Watertown's still in a good spot. I mean, we've still got great elected officials that, you know, have got the best interests of Watertown at heart. It's just getting out there and educating them, because it's always that fear of the unknown or that fear of change that people will automatically default to no on. And that is why we felt it was also important to do a single ballot item. So, you know, we had conversation about splitting the ballot so that if the individuals could vote to reduce the size of council. I mean, the mayor has indicated at our meetings that reducing the size of council would not affect the function and fluidity of the community. And I know that there's been a couple of council members that felt that if this fails, we wouldn't know why it failed. We didn't know if it failed because people were afraid that, you know, we were reducing the number of council, or it failed because we're changing the form of government. But our commission members felt that it was important just to do an all or nothing, because really, even though the city can function with a reduced number of council members under its current structure, we still wanted those voters to have that voice. And in the research that we've done, and this will be part that'll come through in that information sharing piece going forward, the majority of city manager communities have a reduced council size for effective communication and oversight. So that's the other reason. Some are 5, some are 6, some are 7. So our group decided to go for 6 council members and a mayor.
Councilman Vilhauer.
Just a point of clarification, when it comes down to drafting the verbiage on the ballot for June, that will be our city attorney's job, is that correct?
Yeah, that's Matt's task. I did ask him if we could get a little latitude on what we named it, just in trying to think forward as far as a marketing kind of deal when you're trying to do a get out the vote campaign. So he indicated that he's got the ability to kind of name it what he wants within reason, I guess, so long as it's clean. But that was one of the requests that I made to Matt. But yes, Matt would be the one to draft that. To answer your question, Matt is the one to draft how it will be written on the ballot. We've just asked for a little latitude on the label.
Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you very much, Kyle.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mayor.
it. Item number 8 is approval of resolution number 19-15, expressing intent to enter into an airline transportation system lease agreement with SkyWest Airlines, Inc. And I'll look for a motion and second for approval. Moved by Solom, second by Lallam. And I see we have Todd Syrie, our airport manager, here, so I'll ask Todd to fill us in.
Sure. So this is a lease that we do with the ground handling company. SkyWest won the bid back in February with the federal DOT awarded them air service for Watertown. It's good to April 2021. So this is the agreement that Matt and I came up with for SkyWest Airlines.
This isn't the agreement.
The intent to enter into the agreement that Matt and I came up with is what I meant.
Baby steps.
Yes, sorry. That'll be next council meeting.
Yes. This is the intent, and then we'll have a public hearing, true?
Correct.
Yes.
At the next council meeting. Yes. Are there any questions? Councilman Roby.
Anything materially different than what we've done in the past?
Price went up. We charge $3.78 a square foot for as long as I can find the documents. We went to $7 a square foot and $10 a square foot for exclusive space, which is still low in the industry around us, even South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota. But it's baby steps getting us there.
We're low on everything, aren't we?
We are. That's what makes it so great.
A little less great. Councilman Danforth.
Not related to this document, but to the service. You had originally, we talked about flights that left earlier to get to Denver to hit the East Coast, whatever they call that. All those leaving the Denver area. Has that happened? Is that being reflected online right now?
Yes.
It is.
Yep. You're talking about, the flight schedule. I'll go through that. That's what you're referring to? The first 25 days of air service, April 3 to April 28. The flight schedule is getting prepared for our finalized flight schedule, which starts April 29. So April 3 to April 28, we leave at 8:31 a.m. for a morning departure. The afternoon flight's 4:16 arrival into Watertown, 4:46 departure, and then a 12:07 a.m. arrival back into Watertown. On April 29, it'll change to a 6:24 a.m. departure. The rest of the flights will stay the same. So we will be leaving earlier in the morning on the April 29 and later flight schedule.
And so all of that's reflected. And so if you're in the shorter term that you're mentioning, it'll reflect the later departure time. If you're past the date,
correct.
It will okay.
And on United.com, yes.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can leave now. You'll take the last item.
Item number 9 is the first reading of ordinance number 19-02, adding section 7.1720 to chapter 7.17 of the revised ordinances of the City of Watertown to adopt campaign finance disclosure requirements. And there's no action required here, but I'll ask Matt to summarize it.
Thank you, Mayor. At the previous meeting, Public Works meeting, we did discuss this ordinance, and I had not heard any feedback necessarily from the councilmen and women in the meantime, so it's basically verbatim what was presented at the previous Public Works meeting. So what this will do, essentially, it'll adopt the state's campaign finance regulations that are applicable to legislators for members of the city council. So a few highlights of that. Those regulations would include a maximum contribution from individuals of $1,000. Any contributions over $100 would have to be reported on the campaign finance report. That would also be required if this ordinance is adopted. There will be 3 reports that will be required. One is a pre-election report. The second report is a post-election report, and then there will be an annual report that's also required to be filed while the council members would be holding office. And the final piece to that is it provides some measure of a punishment or penalty that the city attorney would be given the ability to seek redress for violations of the ordinance. And I'd take any questions.
Councilman Lallam?
Matt, is this, who do they give these reports to?
The finance officer.
All to the finance officer?
Correct.
And that's only for city elections, correct?
Correct.
And the rest of them go to the Secretary of State?
Correct.
Okay.
Councilman Y?
Matt, will these then be published, or how will people have access to them?
We haven't gotten to that question yet. My preference would be for us to have something on our website that people can access them, like the Secretary of State's website. But there would certainly be a public document that would be held by the finance office at the very, very minimum. But I would prefer to see it be something we could access through the public could access through the website.
Councilman Vilhauer?
Matt, I want to make sure I understand. If a campaign is financed solely by either self-financed or by contributions of $100 or less, there would still be a reporting requirement that would need to be done?
Yes, that's correct. you'd still, Mayor, there'd still be a reporting requirement. If all your contributions were $50, you'd still have to report that aggregate. You just don't have to line item out by donor.
Or likewise, let's say it's 100% seller finance, candidate finance.
Correct.
That would still require a report.
Same thing.
Right, so you'd still have to report on the amount spent.
Sure.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, Matt. Item number 10 is authorization for the mayor to sign a professional services agreement with Infrastructure Design Group, Inc. for miscellaneous engineering services in the amount of up to $50,000 to be performed on a work order basis throughout the 2019 fiscal year. And this motion should include that the mayor will sign the agreement and the city engineer will be authorized to sign work orders. And we discussed this in the committee and it received the committee recommendation. So I'll look for a motion second for approval. Moved by Manti, second by Roby. And Heath, would you just give us the highlights?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This item is, as we discussed in the Public Works and Finance Committee, being brought forward based on a recent assessment of staffing levels in the city engineering office and the workload that we have to complete here during this wrapping up of the design and bidding period before we get into construction. Currently, we're looking at about 27 construction projects this year, give or take, that we are managing currently with myself, the assistant city engineer, and 2 engineering technicians. We will be losing one of those engineering technicians here in the construction season for a temporary extended period of time, and are in need of some further assistance to accomplish the workload that we have in front of us right now. This contract would be for a not to exceed amount of $50,000 to be good through this fiscal year, and I would anticipate working with Infrastructure Design Group on a per task order or per work order basis, essentially having them on as a retainer consultant engineer on a retainer basis to help us perform some of these needed duties and tasks. The initial workload would include a little bit of design and wrap up and some bidding for us, and then continue on into the construction season and potentially perform some of our contract administration and construction management duties throughout the summer months and into the fall. And I'd be glad to entertain any questions that the council might have.
Okay, Councilman Lallam.
Heath, question for you. Do we look at any potential conflict of interest if they're working on the design stuff and then they go out and possibly bid on some of that? Or is that something that we could potentially have? Or
No, that's a good question, good consideration. It would not normally be looked at as a conflict of interest. It would be considered a lot the same of some of our projects that we would exercise those contracts with on a specific project. For instance, we're in a bridge design contract right now with IDG. It's likely we would continue on into the construction phase and they would administer the contract administration and construction management of that project as well in the future. So we would, that would not be out of the norm to manage it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Others? Councilman Danforth?
This is the same question that Adam just asked, but so if I am under here with IDG and we have a project that there is a developer that's out there, could IDG serve as the developer's engineer and our engineer on that project? Or are you talking only street projects like repair? Or is it any development type stuff that we would be involved with?
That's a good question, Councilman Danforth, Madam Mayor. So the expectation of this contract would be for capital construction projects. And there's kind of the 2 arms that the engineering office, 2 duties that they primarily perform. One is the capital construction management, and the other one is development review or regulatory side of things. We're reviewing and permitting development of the public infrastructure. So this contract would relate to the capital construction side of things. So all those projects in our 212 CIP fund, those 27 projects that I cited, That's primarily where these forces would be placed. Solely, I should say, where these forces would be placed.
Other questions? Councilman Albertson.
And what you're saying is it's not going to be a cost, that you actually could save money by this process? I mean, there'll be a cost, don't get me wrong, but your interpretation is that by being able to do these up front, you could save time and money?
Thank you for that question, Councilman Albertson. Madam Mayor, the intent is not as much a cost savings, but the ability to get the work done is really what it boils down to at a cost. Just for conversation purposes, we do still have the vacant Engineer 1 position. The question was posed in the Public Works Committee meeting. If that vacant position had been filled the last several months, would we be coming forth with this request? I'm fairly confident I could say that's very unlikely that we would be coming forth with this request, because of having that extra staff or that extra engineer on board full time could have picked up the slack, and we wouldn't have gotten a little bit behind the 8 ball to where we're at right now, at least to a point where I'm not comfortable getting things done without having these additional services at this cost. I can say not having that position has been a savings, though. So it does, the net effect is there that we have not been paying a staffed engineer for several months. So you do have the balanced net effect of savings on that end.
Other questions? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item 11 is authorization for the mayor to sign a professional services agreement with McKinstry for preliminary estimating of ice arena operations and maintenance costs and establishing draft user agreements not to exceed the amount of $12,000. And this did receive the recommendation of the committee where this was discussed earlier tonight. I will look for a motion and a second. Moved by Albertson, second by Lallam. And Heath, will you please continue on with this one?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, this one was discussed in the previous Public Works Finance Committee meeting. We have entertained looking into getting some professional services from McKinstry. This group has a high level of knowledge and experience in ice arena operations and design, bid, build phases of new ice arenas. This discussion in going into contract with this company kind of was sparked from internal research that we have our assistant Park and Rec superintendent here this evening as well. We had some internal discussions in regards to this current phase that we're in and needing to accomplish some user group agreements. And essentially there's two primary components to those user group agreements. One being how much is it going to cost the city to operate and maintain a potential new facility if it's built, and the other one being what time do these user groups want to use that facility. So those two factors are important, that we get those accurate assessments so that the user groups in the city can move forward with an agreement with each user group with a high level of comfort that our numbers are fairly accurate. We don't want the user groups to be misled with inaccurate numbers. The city doesn't obviously want to be misled with any of our estimations. Those estimations have been performed with internal staff forces. The component this company would do would be a simple check off of those numbers, maybe throw some more information at us if we happen to miss something, indicate any red flags they might see in our numbers. And then the second component of that would be to actually have negotiations with these user groups to find out what prime ice times do they want, and their particular agreements would then be set according to those two factors, operation maintenance estimates and the times that they want to use the facility. In a nutshell, that's what those agreements would help accomplish. So.
Right, and Terry Kelly's here from the Park Department, and I would encourage staff members, if you had any question at all about that from our earlier discussion, to ask Terry. But Terry, you just want to comment?
Yeah, the only comment I got, Mayor, is I'm going to echo Heath. I did the preliminary numbers with help Kristen, user groups, historical data, but in no way am I a professional as far as what this group would bring to the table. And when we're looking at entering into long-term user agreements, as far as finding a fiscal dollar amount annually, I'm in complete agreement that, my numbers strictly were based on an old facility, historical data, and it's not my expertise by any means. I could present a number to get us in the ballpark, but I think it's essential when we're going to approach user groups to have an accurate, plus or minus 5%. Everything's an unknown before you build it, but from refrigeration systems to R values of insulation to, I did not look at that. I looked at just how many staff do we think we need? So I'm in full support to bring in an expert in the field. And Heath and I, the mayor and I have talked about this, and do I feel bad? No, I did my work of what I could provide, but I think when we're talking this amount of dollars and reaching out really to a new process we've never done, approaching an association or multiple associations to share in that O&M cost, I think those numbers need to be extremely accurate. So I'm up here just to say I'm in full support of entering an agreement with this firm.
We'll be asking the user groups to commit to participating at some level of expense, and we want to be fair and accurate about what we're asking them to do. So,
Correct.
Are there questions? Councilman Lallam?
Terry, are you thinking as this is just a way for us to come up with proper numbers and that we can facilitate this whole ice arena going forward with the numbers that are probably a little more accurate based on their professional knowledge? And I'm sure they've been in other facilities that are going to be somewhat similar as far as size and things like that. Are they going to look at the overall design?
Right. My understanding is, you take the design criteria. You've got insulation factors. Are we using ammonia? Are we using CO2? Are we using glycol? What's the recovery cost and how much that costs to circulate on the square foot? Those are things that, honestly, Adam, I just did not have the resources or the expertise to do. But that is the goal, because we're going to kind of pave a new path here with asking an association or multiple to help with the O&M cost. And speaking with the mayor, I'm just, I feel comfortable within, I'm going to say 15% of my numbers. I think all said and done after a fiscal year, I'd be close, but I'm not comfortable enough to tell the mayor or Heath, I'm 100% positive these are our costs.
I'm not sure that the user groups are going to be comfortable at 15% either. I think they're
Right.
probably a little,
Right.
little closer to it.
Absolutely, and that's to protect them as well. I don't want to overshoot those numbers and overcharge, or in vice versa. I don't want the city to take on more because I undercharged. So when I spoke with the mayor, I was completely in favor of bringing in someone that lives, breathes, the life of ice arenas, not only construction but operational. I just think long-term in a multi-million-dollar project with a high operation maintenance cost, we need to truly bring in this expertise. And, the number of 12,000, really long-term, and when we think about the dollars and cents that this is going to bring is not that crazy of a number to get that. But I'm going to say plus or minus 5% is what my hope is.
Yeah, and I would think they'd be able to, get that down to pretty similar based on amount of electricity used and how much refrigerant and all that.
Right.
And then factor in, I would think, similar to what our rates are and come up with a number that's fairly accurate to the point where they're going to feel comfortable.
Right.
I think it's just a way for us to move
And
forward.
that's the thing, the numbers I shared with the committee, the building committee, we were on the operational side.
Yeah.
The numbers I shared were conversations with, our parks department saying, how many guys do you think you would need?
Yeah.
We took the utility cost based on square footage from Brookings, from Larson, and multiplied that CC, whatever the factor against Watertown Municipal Utilities costs.
Yeah.
But, we're based on, what are they using for refrigerant? What's their R value in the roof? So it's such a, for me, it was such a, I won't say a guess. It wasn't, there was scientific reasoning to my numbers, but I'm just not comfortable to give them to the mayor and say, create an agreement based on this.
Well, and there's unknowns with how they built their facility versus what we're looking to build ours. So
Absolutely.
I think we have to be on the same page and moving forward.
Correct.
So that's all I got.
Councilman Y?
will this estimate show then it's obviously going to show a lot of different examples. Will it also show like an 8-month operation or a full year operation too? Will those numbers be in there?
When we went when Chris and I set up what we thought we want to do, I think, what did we do, Chris, an 8, 9, 10 month? And I think we would task them with the same thing. And Heath, you've probably met with the proposed offer more to the mayor than I have, but I would assume we would do, what we know for sure is 6 months, we're going to have 2 rinks. But the initial rink will only be a 6-month facility. So then we either have a 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th month for the second one. And those are things that I think, I don't know, Heath or Mayor, if you want to add to that, or if we don't know what the scope of the actual.
We would want to look at that, yes, for sure. Absolutely. That needs to be part of it. And we're going to be hiring the consultant on an hourly basis with a not-to-exceed amount. And if more questions come up, we'll ask them. And actually, we refined our scope of work, and they brought that number down to $7,000 over the weekend. But last week when we were talking to them, not knowing the work that had been done, they gave us the estimate of 12. But regardless, we'll have questions. They'll help us through this process, and it may evolve into something more as well if more questions come up. But they're experts, and I'm pretty confident in talking to them that they'll give us a much more comprehensive review of what we were looking for. So looking forward to that. Councilman Danforth?
What's the turnaround for their work? When would we expect to get their report back?
I'll refer that to the mayor.
Did we get that, Heath? I know we talked about that, nailing that down. But the work would, if we add more things to it, it'll.
But the basic, while we're waiting, do you know when the golf course is going to open up?
You know what? We're going to clear it just in time for the Compesco Open, which I believe is in August. So we'll be fine. Yeah. Thanks for that, Councilman.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Danforth, just a cursory review here. I know we discussed getting the exact timeline in this contract, but I'm not seeing it noted in here. But that's something we could fine tune with them and get followed up on. Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments?
I could note, Madam Mayor, if I may, on the heels of that question, that this particular work in the sum of $7,000 that the mayor referred to is estimated at only 40 hours worth of work for their services, just to give you some perspective on the timeline of things.
And my last comment I'm up here in full support. I ran a lot of numbers, spent a lot of time, but I'm still not comfortable with the approach we're taking as far as asking these associations to contribute dollars. So I'm in full favor of moving forward. I did the numbers, and I think they're close, but I do think we need expertise in this situation.
Councilwoman Manti?
I guess I just want to kind of make a consolidated comment in the sense that based on what kind of information we're going to get, what's at stake in terms of the user groups and the city, and then the lifetime of this project and the money we're going to spend, and you amortize the $12,000 over all of that, this is one of those things where I don't think we can afford not to do it. And it's a very small investment that will have a big payoff. And so I just really wanted to make sure people understood that this is a little tiny piece of what's going to be a big project, and it also is going to give us a really good foundation to start from. So,
thank you, Beth. Anyone else? All right, I'll look for action. Oh, Councilman Lallam.
Heath, can you follow up with that as far as the time frame that they're thinking?
Absolutely, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item 12 is authorization for the mayor to sign all necessary documents related to the construction agreement with Reedy Construction for the Highway 212 sanitary sewer replacement project in the amount of $382,055.50. And this was discussed in committee and received the recommendation of the committee. So I'll look for a motion and second for approval. Moved by Vilhauer, second by Bueller, and I will ask Keith to give us the high points.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of council, so this item is the next step with the South Dakota DOT in relation to our sanitary sewer realignment. That is a direct result of the DOT reconstructing Phase 1 of Highway 212 this summer. As you recall, sometime back here, a couple months ago, we went into an agreement with the DOT to bid our portion of our work with their project, which was a great thing to be able to accomplish as far as coordinating that work and getting an economy of scale type of bidding on our work. The DOT opened their bids on February 20th. Reedy Construction was the low bidder that the DOT has awarded their contracts with. And then now the next step is for us to go into agreement with Reedy Construction for our portion of that sanitary sewer realignment in the sum of $382,055.50. I'll note the engineer's estimate was just over $399,000, so that it was a reasonable bid. And the next two lowest bidders were almost twice this amount, so I was glad to see Reedy Construction's number in line with our engineer's estimate to perform these services.
Thank you. Questions? Councilman Lallam?
I just got one, Heath. Why, there's a huge discrepancy between the low bid and the next bid. Any reasoning that you could have saw on that?
Our consultant is here.
Perfect.
And Vanessa, I'm sure, would like to enlighten us on what some of those discrepancies might have been and the details of those bids as they were received.
I can. Thank you for your time. Basically, it's not an easy task what they will be doing to relocate the sewer main, and part of the sewer main does have to remain in service while they're doing the bridge work, and then it all has to transfer over. One of the higher bids was suggested that they wanted to put in an entirely new temp line while we're installing a new main, so that's twice the amount of work. And then I would imagine that the other bid had to do with the cofferdam. Our river level is high, and so if I were out and looking as a contractor and seeing how deep the water is, I would bid high too. So that's the speculation on why the bid prices were as high as they were.
It's tricky work. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Vanessa.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Regards to the schedule for this project, the utility work's anticipated to start May 1st. Again, that's the utility work. As far as the structure itself, the bridge that our sewer's being realigned next to, that's anticipated to be performed June through September this summer. And the original 90-day closure for Phase 1 was extended to a 120-day closure. This information is from the DOT. And the overall completion date for the project is October 25th, 2019 for Phase 1.
Oh,
just for information purposes.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Councilman Solom?
What is Highway 81 the eastern portion of the first phase, or is it still by the pool or Broadway?
It's Highway 81.
Okay.
Yes. Phase 1 goes from Highway 20 to Highway 81, and we did work on both of those intersections, so it doesn't include, it picks up where they left off. So, anything else? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. And the DOT will have weekly meetings with the contractor. And Heath, have you heard when those will be starting?
As early as the end of this week, as far as a pre-construction meeting, was the latest I've heard.
Okay, and the pre-construction meeting will be standing room only. But after that, when they do the weekly meetings, those are open to the public, and you're welcome to come. Councilman Danforth.
On a related topic, and this might be a stupid question, because I assume it to be, but, with our recent rain and thaw that we've had, that area by the Cowboy and Shopko area was quite full of water. Will that problem be remedied with that project?
Phase 2.
But it will.
It will
That's
be.
a part of taking.
Right.
A part of what will be taken care of.
Yes.
So, the extent to what we see today should be either eliminated or greatly reduced.
And I'm going to take that back. I haven't seen the final design, but right now that water flows from phase 2 into phase 1. So there might be some work in both phases. But that's a very challenging problem for the DOT. The highway blocks the natural drainage from getting downstream to the river, and it always has. And it's, there's not an easy fix to that. I haven't seen the design. So there'll be,
Okay.
it's possible that there will be some of it done in phase 1 on the west side of Highway 81, and then continuing on the east side with phase 2.
But whenever the dust settles on both projects, it
Yes.
would be hopeful
Yes.
that has been remedied or reduced.
Yes,
Okay,
I
that's what I'm getting
remedied
at.
is a little heavy, I
Yeah.
would say. Improved.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Moving on here. Item number 13 is authorization for the mayor to sign a farmland lease agreement with Nathan Reichling for city-owned real property located adjacent to the Watertown Regional Landfill. I'll look for a motion and second for approval. Moved by Bueller. Second by Mantee, and I'll ask Matt to explain this.
Thank you, Mayor. The previous 2 council meetings, we had notices of intent to enter into this lease. And what this is there's 80.26 acres adjacent to the landfill that the city acquired a couple of years ago. And what's that? Right. And within the last year or 2, excuse me. And the previous lessee's lease expired. We sent out a request for proposals, and Nathan Reichling ended up being the high bidder, or high proposal, I should say, to pay us $237.50 per acre for a total of $19,061.75 on an annual basis. This lease is a 3-year lease with the option of 3 additional 3-year renewals.
Thank you. Are there any questions? All right. Oh, you have a question? Councilman Vilhauer.
Comment. I think when this came before us, Mike Berger presented some rates relative to what average land rental rates are, and this was on the high side of those amounts. So the public's wondering if this is a sweetheart deal to the lessee. No, it's pretty commensurate with going rate in the area.
Yeah, Councilman, I would actually echo Mike's comments at the last meeting to state that it's much higher than the average in the area. If we had entered into this lease without that proposal, the average we were looking at was $170, $170, I believe, is the average in the area. Thank you.
Right, so it's a good deal for the city. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item 14 is authorization for the mayor to sign a lease agreement with Gerald Kosuski for city-owned real property located at the Watertown Regional Airport. And I'll look for a motion second for approval. Moved by Y, second by Lallam. And I see we have Airport Manager Todd Syrie here, so I'll let you explain, Todd.
This is a lease that the mayor can enter into this time. This is Gerald Kozeski. He's been at the airport for a long, long time. This is actually his second building that he's built at the airport. The lease expired, and this is just re-upping the ground lease for his private hangar on the airfield.
Okay. Any questions? Councilman Lallam?
Todd, how does this compare with the rest of the lease? Are we in line with the other ones that are out there?
We are. We put a 2% increase in our leases now. Every lease that comes up, we're adding the 2% clause, so we don't have to redo everything right this second.
So 2% per year then?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other? Oh.
25 year?
Yeah, with.
Is that pretty standard?
Yep, for ground leases, yeah.
Okay.
So he builds a building on the property, and then we rent in the ground.
He owns
or
the
lease
building, we own
ground.
the land.
Correct.
Got it.
Other questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Okay, the next item is old business. And I think Kristen had some old business she wanted to tell us about.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. At the last council meeting, Don asked about the snow removal budget. I'll give an update right now, but I'll probably actually come back and give another one because it seems like it just keeps snowing and stuff keeps happening. But so the numbers that I have only take us through the February bills and February's payroll. As of the end of February, we have spent 50% of the personnel services budget, and we're right around 40% for the current operating expenditures. So of a total $685,000 budget, we've spent $191,000, but then we need to take out that $195,000 of that total budget was for purchasing of snow removal equipment. So we are sitting pretty tight right now, even just through the month of February. So probably as we go through 2019, we'll want to be watching it when we hit that October, November. Like I said, I'll report again in April and have a little bit stronger numbers because that will take us through the March payroll and a few more of our snow events that happened here.
So this means no snow this fall, right?
That's exactly right. It cannot snow in November or December. So I've already said it.
All right. Thank you, Kristen. Is there any other old business? Dee Dee has some old business. Dee Dee Whitman.
Hello again. I hope this is the appropriate time for this. One of the things that I wanted to present to you all was our accreditation certificate. I mentioned it back in January, and we actually had the ceremony out in Pier on the 12th. And we've got some lovely pictures with our board members and our state librarian, Daria Bossman. So just wanted to bring that up and say thank you for your support. And we've got one of the best libraries in the state.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for bringing that up. Any other old business? Is there any new business?
Mayor?
Yes.
Real quick, I just noticed something here on the agenda. The items 13 and 14, leases actually do require a public hearing. And so just in the interest of covering all of our bases, would you open up a public hearing to see if anybody's here to comment on either of those two items?
Absolutely. I would like to open the public hearing for the farmland lease agreement with Nathan Reichling. Is there anyone here to speak about this, which is for real property located adjacent to the Watertown Regional Landfill? See no one, I will close the public hearing, and I will open the public hearing for discussion on the proposed lease agreement with Gerald Kisuski for city-owned real property located at the Watertown Regional Airport. Is there anyone here to speak about that? See none, I will close the public hearing. Okay, good. New business. I will be traveling to Recon, the annual retail conference in Las Vegas in May, and I wanted to let the council know that I'll be going, and the public to know too as well. I will be actively trying to recruit retail businesses to come to Watertown, and so I would like input from people if they have comments about that, or input to give me recommendations from the council as well on I'll be asking you to authorize me to negotiate, and we'll be doing that at an upcoming meeting, but start thinking about that now before I leave in May. I want to know what my cards are that I can play out there, and any agreement that I do make would have to be ratified by the council in a public meeting, so just so people know. I won't be going alone. I'll be accompanied by all three members of the Watertown Development Company, Tim Sheehan from the Chamber of Commerce, and possibly some others from our community, and we'll all be working together as a team to try and recruit retail businesses to Watertown. And as you might recall, we didn't go last year because we had retail strategies on retainer. And the year prior to that, I do believe that Mayor Thorson went, and maybe some other members of the council, Councilman Solom. So hopefully we'll see some business coming back from that. And
Mayor, what are the dates on that? Do you know?
I don't know the exact dates. It's in early May, I think, or to mid-May. All right, I have a note to talk about sales tax, but I can't remember why. So do you know why, Kristen? New business? No. Okay, maybe. Was it about the president? No, but do you want to talk about that? Honestly, can't remember why I wrote that note. It should have been more explicit. Is there any other new business?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
If I may, given the recent thawing, engineering office has been dealing with a lot of phone calls with localized high water and concerns with that. And I just wanted to bring to the council's attention that we've been working closely, of course, with the street department, and they're the boots on the ground, obviously, that are taking care and trying to mitigate a lot of the localized high water areas as far as clearing culverts, clearing ice and snow and things of that nature to keep the water flowing as they should be. One particular location I'll note was near 7th Avenue Northeast and 6th Street Northeast as of last Friday. That's the Roby Creek area. It was pretty extensive high water through there and the flooding of streets. And I went by there personally just yesterday, and that has receded quite dramatically. So I was glad to see that a lot of the street department's efforts had worked. At least I'd like to think they had something to do with that.
I'm sure they did, yes.
I know they had 3 backhoes working in that area that day, last Friday, when I went out and looked at it. And recently today, though, on 3rd Avenue Northeast, near the Dakota Commons subdivision, there were some concerns about how the water was being routed there due to some what was thought to be some obstructions. I haven't heard from the street department, but they were on site trying to mitigate that as well. So, and with this thawing, of course, and I'm speaking on behalf of Rob completely here, but also comes the season for potholes. And I know they've had a lot of signage out for some of the really bad ones to prevent cars from going through them, which is not convenient for anybody, obviously, but I would just ask for the public's patience as our street crews are well spent on the flood fighting efforts and are getting to the pothole concerns as soon as they can on a prioritized effort there as well. So,
thank you. I appreciate that. And I would like to tell the public, too, that we are doubling our efforts for pothole repairs in 2019 compared to 2018 because we hired more staff. So hopefully this will mean quicker repair of the potholes, and people can report them. We don't automatically know where the potholes are unless people tell us. So don't feel like you're bugging us. There's a place on our website for you to report potholes, or you can call the street department. Yes. Councilman Danforth.
I've gotten some calls in regard, and I think probably the area, Heath, that you're just referring to, but if it's deemed that it's not a obstruction that is causing the problem and there's water there, because Lord only knows where it could be, is that a city issue, or is that something that you need to recommend to that homeowner or that homeowners association that they got to take care of their problem? Where do we go with that? I have gotten calls on that.
Right.
And
well, every year we have more and more people live in that neighborhood, and it seems like every spring we get frantic calls from people. Looks like the water's rising up high. Are they going to flood? What are we doing about it? And so we need to look at this, and we will be out there and just making sure that drainway is clear and free flowing. But several of the businesses down there and the homeowners have had to sandbag in the past. Part of that is that there's a subdivision designed but not constructed yet, partially in the path, which has some of the routing is part of its grading. And, you know, when you're relying on, lines on paper don't really function until the work's done, so.
Well, it's just, I don't know what to tell people when it's just a water issue that isn't due to an obstruction. You know, I've
Right.
gotten comments of, you know, why do you allow this to happen? And we
It
all
has-
know how
right,
those things happen at
right.
times.
And in past years, when I was up in the engineering office, I got calls every spring. The downstream drainage way is blocked, and every year we get that call, and every year we go and check just to make sure, because it is possible that it has been blocked. But in the past, we've found it isn't blocked. It's just very flat. There's not a defined channel, and the water is coming pretty fast this time of year. And so that's an issue. So we're watching it. Councilman Bueller?
Mayor, I did have a constituent contact me over the weekend in regards to the parking lot area. Once again, we're up against that, and I'm not sure what our position is. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, I should probably tell you which one that is, because there's probably more than one in town. From Dakota Bank, between Dakota Bank and the Hy-Vee grocery store.
Mall.
The mall stuff again. We're bumping up against that. I don't know. I didn't really know exactly how to answer that question, because I know that we did help. We did assist with that at one point.
We knew it
but there's
wasn't
a
going to
really
last.
nasty one right in that vicinity. My
Right,
understanding.
that is private property. It is not okay to spend taxpayer dollars improving private property. That's against the law. So in order for the city forces to fix somebody's private property, we would need to have some compelling reason to do that. And there were corrections made in the past where the city acted as the clearinghouse, and the individual businesses out there contributed to the cost, and then the city farmed out the work to make some repairs out there. We knew it wasn't a permanent fix, but it got it through for a while. So that is private property, though.
Well, if nothing else, to reiterate our position on it, I think it was good.
Yeah. Thank you. Councilman Lallam?
I would just probably tell the general public that it's supposed to be warm all this week and snow will be melting, so make sure they get out there to where the sewers are and try to clean those out if possible.
Right.
I mean,
Keep your
that's-
drainways open.
Yeah, otherwise you're gonna have water going into places you don't want it to go, so
Right.
make sure you get to the drains and, you know, try to get them out, cleaned out as much as possible, and if there's big obstructions that, you know, maybe the street department or the forestry, if there's branches, I know the last ice that we had, there was a bunch of branches down in our area, you know, let's try to get them cleaned up and taken care of.
All right. Thank you. Anything else? All right. Are there any liaison member reports? See none. Item 18 is executive session pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2, and we will have an executive session this evening in order to discuss and consult with legal counsel on contractual matters and personnel matters. We do not expect to take action upon coming out, so I'll look for a motion and a second to go into executive session. Moved by Mantee, second by Bueller. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.